everybody. I'm coming back to you for your bonus video this week. This week's bonus video is going to be on paper writing, and in particular, the why we write papers and how to go about writing a good paper. So the reason I want to do this video is because all too often, professors, myself included, teachers, even in high school, even earlier, just tell you, go write a paper. And they give you a topic, but they don't tell you what it is they're looking for, what makes a good paper, or even why the heck you're writing in the first place. And well, those of us who've done it for a while, writing or teaching about writing, seem to take it for granted that everyone should be able to know why writing is valuable. The fact is, not many of us take the time to even think about that. And very often we then give you these assignments without expecting or without realizing that you don't know what it is we're looking for, which means that you end up associating this sense of writing with this sense of fear, a lack of understanding. And therefore, what ends up happening is you end up with people who are capable of being very good writers, coming to the conclusion, I don't know how to write, and stopping there. And the fact is that that isn't how it should be, because writing is something that is worth learning how to do and worth learning how to do well. And so what I want to do is kind of peel back the why it's worth your time and actually say the things which so many professors and teachers take for granted and yet are worth discussing and taking the time to think about. So first off, why on earth is it worth doing writing? Why do professors tell you learn how to write? Or why is it that professors tell you, here's a paper, learn how to do it? Well, here's basically why. So why write? Well, the reason why we ask you all to write is because writing is a skill that is worth learning. And I say writing is a skill, it is not something that comes naturally to anyone. And I don't mean like it comes naturally to some and not to others. I mean, quite literally, writing is something that comes naturally to no one. It is something which everyone has to learn how to do. Every human being, more or less every human being, learns how to speak and understand. But in human history, a very, very small percentage of us has ever learned how to read and write. And even those who can read and write, a smaller percentage take the time to do anything more than write their name. So writing is a skill. It is something that you have to learn how to do. Oh, I can't, there. It is something that you have to learn how to do. And like any other skill, you just get better by practicing. Now, there are many skills, I don't know, what is a skill that nobody really is at all practical? Oh, that skill where you learn how to tie a cherry string with your tongue. That's a skill, but it's not really one that, like, yes, it's fun at parties, or yes, it's fun to impress your friends, but it's not a skill you really need to learn how to do. Writing, by contrast, is a skill that is very important, generally speaking. And just think about it. Well, yes, in the modern world, we're doing a lot more things by video, so writing is less of a thing than it was in terms of entertainment and popular culture and how much of our time we spend writing. Yes, it's down compared to before, but think about how much of your life is still tied in with writing. All of you text every day, I'd be willing to bet. That's a form of writing. All of you discuss, you write emails to each other. Emailing is a type of writing. Every job you ever apply for will involve something like a cover letter or a resume. All of that is written. And so learning how to write well is a skill that, if you have it, is going to really help you in many areas of your life. So we're not just giving you, yes, there's a part of writing where professors ask you to write to prove that you understand this stuff in our class. But that's really the secondary reason. We could do that in other ways. We could give oral exams. The real reason that writing is encouraged is because writing is itself something that is worth learning how to do well. And as I said, nobody is born able to do it or able to do it well. The only way you can learn to write is by practicing. And if you tell yourself, I'm just not cut out for writing, the fact is that that isn't the case. Nobody is cut out or not cut out. You just have to practice. You have to get in the right frame of mind so that you understand what it is you're being asked. And you need to understand why I'm doing this, what am I supposed to be getting out of it, and what am I supposed to be doing? If you can give answers to those sorts of questions, You can improve your writing ability such that it's just a matter of putting in the time and effort and hard work and improving by thinking about what you're doing while you're doing it. If you just do something mindlessly, you're not going to get better. You have to think, what is the point of this? Why am I writing? And so that's really why I'm having this bonus video, to force everybody to take the time back and think, well, why am I taking this time to write? Why is my professor asking me to do this? Are they just trying to torture me? Maybe there are some professors who do it that way. I'm not trying to torture you. I'm trying to get you to practice a skill that is going to come in handy throughout the entirety of your life. All right, so like all skills, writing is something you can be better or worse at. And the goal, of course, is to get better at it. You want to, by the end of your life or by any point, be what we would call a good writer. But the fact of the matter is that there's no such one thing as good writing. And also, no one ever becomes a perfect writer. It's always about improving. And what it takes to improve and what it takes to count as writing well, there's no one answer to that question, or at the very least, there's no one type of thing that counts as good writing. Rather, writing is something that there are many ways to do it poorly, and there are many ways of doing it well. And what counts as doing it well or doing it poorly is going to change entirely on what the goal is. So in the same sort of way, all my markers are dying on me. This isn't fun. Hopefully we make it to the end of the semester. So like any type of skill, whether you're doing it well or poorly depends on your goal. Think about drawing. Whether you make a nice drawing or not entirely comes down to what it is that you're being asked to draw. Whether or not you do a good job at your job comes down to what you are being asked to do. If you're being asked to stock the shelves and you make the most beautiful spreadsheet ever that has every information your boss could ever want, you may have done a good job of what you did, but that's not what you were asked to do. So in the same way, writing is a matter of what your goal is. So what sorts of goals are there? Because there isn't one type of goal when writing. Writing, like a lot of skills, can be used for many different things. And in fact, there's many types of writing. And there's persuasive writing, there's descriptive writing, there's entertainment writing. And so really, the reason that there are so many different types of writing is that you need to think about what actually are you doing when you're writing. And very often, when we think about writing, we think about taking ideas in our head and putting it down, or just regurgitating what we were told before, just saying things we know. But in truth, I like to think about writing as something different, and I think this is a better way of understanding what it is you are actually being asked to do when you're writing. Think about writing as, best way to think about it is as, what's the best way of putting this? Time traveling mind control. Now, this can sound kind of outrageous. What it is to write is to travel through time and control minds. It's like, Professor X meets some time travel, I don't know, Doctor Who or something like that. Why do I say that writing is time traveling mind control? Well, actually think what it is you're doing when you're writing. When you're writing, you are taking either a pen or pencil and a piece of paper or a computer document, and what you're doing is producing little shapes on that piece of paper or on that document that somebody else in the future is going to read over. You're creating something that in the future is going to be read by someone, and in that time is not simply going to be read, but is going to be read with having an effect on what they think. When you're writing, what you're trying to do is affect someone's mind in such a way that in the future, they come to think what you tried to get them to think when in the past you wrote these things or made these shapes on the page in the first place. So for instance, on this paper, if you write your paper on a Wednesday and I read it on the Saturday, your goal was on Wednesday to do something so that when on Saturday I read it, my mind comes to have the thoughts that you were trying to get my mind to have when you created it at an earlier time. And I know this often isn't the way we think about writing. We think of writing as just like putting words on a page, but really what makes writing successful is that you are able to get the reader. There's always a reader, even with a diary. You're assuming that somebody in the future, yourself, is going to be reading that diary and having some sort of thought on the basis of what you wrote at that past time. And because of this, what is going to count as good writing is going to depend on what impact you're trying to have on the mind that is going to be doing the reading. So if you're writing, you have to ask yourself, what goal am I trying to bring about in the other person? You have to think when you're writing about what the audience is going to be trying to do, or what effect you're attempting to have on your audience. And there are many different effects you could have. And these each correspond to the different types of writing. So in something like, why do none of these markers work? You might just have to write in red, as none of these are working. All right, there we go. This one's kind of working. There's persuasive writing. What are you doing when you're writing persuasively? Well, when you're writing persuasively, you're trying to persuade someone to reach a certain conclusion. So what makes persuasive writing good is going to depend and be different from, say, something like telling a story. When you're trying to tell a story, the key is for it to be interesting, to be entertaining, to get the person to keep reading. You don't necessarily try to get them to reach any particular conclusion. Rather, it's just about telling them a good story. With persuasive writing, by contrast, what makes it good is a matter of getting them to believe what you want them to believe. And so you see, what makes a certain type of writing is what effect you're going to have on the reader in the future when they are doing the reading. Another type of writing you can try to cause them to have an emotional response. So it can be something not just that you're trying to tell them a story, but trying to have them feel a certain way. Or maybe it's simply that you're just trying to provide them with information, be descriptive, informative. So whenever you're writing a paper or asked to write a paper, the first thing you need to do is ask yourself, and actually, let me step back. It's not just when you're writing a paper. Whenever you're writing, you have to ask yourself, what effect am I attempting to have on the person who's going to be reading this? Don't just start writing. Pause and ask yourself, what am I trying to do? Even if it's a text, are you trying to persuade someone to come have dinner in your neighborhood? Are you trying to tell them a funny story and make them laugh? Are you just trying to describe to them who you are? Are you just trying to introduce yourself? And what you need to do in the writing is going to depend on that. So that's really how to approach writing. Don't think of it as just writing, this thing you can either be good at or bad at. No, no, no. Think of it as you are trying to affect an audience. So you have to imagine, and this is why writing's so hard and why anyone who it comes easy to, one, I don't believe them, or they're just like a savant, an absolute genius. Because really what it is you have to imagine, if I'm the person in the future reading this thing that is presented to me, I, the writer now, have to imagine what that person would respond to what I'm writing. So if I write something like, cows are cute, I need to think, how is this person going to interpret it? Are they going to interpret me as talking about the physical animal? Are they going to think about me talking about statues of cows? All of these sorts of things need to come into mind. And that's why writing's so hard. You have to predict what somebody else is going to think when they respond to what you present to them, which you create now, even though they will be reading it later. So that's the general background. And as I said, this is a skill that needs to be practiced, because every type of writing you do in your life every writing you do will make you better in the future, as long as you're taking the time to think about what you're doing. All right, so there's no one, of course, because there are different types of mind control, there's no one way to write well. Rather, you kind of have to practice different sorts of writing, and you can be like, I am much better at persuasive writing than I am at telling stories or making people emotional. I can write a good argumentative paper. I can't write a fairy tale to save my life. I tried to do it once in college. It was god awful. I'm not the person who writes funny things that makes their friends laugh. I'm the person who can persuade people to believe certain things. So also if you not doing well on academic writing, or you have in the past, don't think you're not good at writing. That's not how writing works. You're talked about it, you're told about it in that way, but the fact is there's a lot of nuance to it. It's complicated. And the key is understand what it is you're doing and then craft what you're creating in that way. All right, so that's all that stuff. That's all the background of why you write, why I'm taking the time to talk about why we write. Now, in a given class, there's going to be a particular type of writing that you're being asked to do. And so the first step whenever you're writing a paper is to identify what you're being asked to do. Are you being asked to tell a story? If so, you're going to have to craft your type of writing in the same way you craft speech to an audience. Now, in this class, you are going to be asked for a very particular type of writing. And what you're being asked for is a type of persuasive writing. But the better way to think of it is, instead of just thinking in terms of persuasion, what you're being asked to do is it's argumentative writing. Argumentative writing, and this is the same argument that we talked about earlier in the semester in the logical, critical thinking sense, not the fighting sense. What you're doing in this type of writing is you are trying to persuade someone of a certain conclusion, get them to believe this, but you're not trying to do it by using fancy terms or just writing so prettily or by threatening them. Because one way of trying to persuade someone is just to say to write them a letter that says, either do what I'm going to tell you to do, or else I'm going to kill your whole family. That's persuasive writing, but that's not argumentative writing. What argumentative writing is it's about giving someone a reason to accept a certain conclusion, a certain thesis, by providing them with reasons that they can recognize are good evidence in favor of the conclusion you're arguing for. So the way you can think about this type of writing is it is a reasoned defense of some claim. It is giving people reasons, constructing an entire paper of reasons in support of a particular claim. And this particular claim is going to generally be a particular answer to a particular question. So for instance, here's a question you might be asked, and this was the one I talked about in class on Monday. What are better, cats or dogs? In an argumentative paper, what you'd be doing is you'd be providing reasons to support either the claim that cats are better than dogs or the claim that dogs are better than cats. And so in a persuasive piece, if you do it well, by the end, your audience is going to agree with you, or at the very least, appreciate that you've raised some good points that they have to respond to. If you give them good reasons to think that dogs are better than cats, then after you're done, they're going to have to go, you raised some pretty good points. I recognize those points. Now, if I agree with you that dogs are better than cats, maybe you persuaded me that dogs are better than cats, and now I think dogs are better. Or if I still think cats are better than dogs, I better have responses to what you say. I better take the time to, as the reader, think, yes, this person made a good point that dogs are more social, but I need to respond now. Explain why that isn't proof that dogs are better than cats. So this is what argumentative writing is about. It's about providing a defense of some claim such that somebody reading your paper is able to recognize that the conclusion or the thesis you're arguing for is something that, if they don't finally agree with you, they see the reasons you give and appreciate that those reasons do in fact support your claim. That you are giving, to use our terms from earlier in the semester, if not a sound argument, at least a valid one. One in which the conclusion, if the premises are true, follows, and then they have to argue against those premises or something along those lines. Hopefully this is making sense. So you can see how this type of writing differs from, say, storytelling, When I'm giving a story, I don't need to get you to draw a certain conclusion. I'm just trying to entertain you. My success is determined not by whether you hold the beliefs I want you to hold, but rather whether you're entertained. When a new book comes out, it's a matter of, are there people interested in reading it? Do they enjoy it? With a poem, it's not about getting someone to accept something. It's rather about getting them to feel a certain way. When you're giving a news story, it's not necessarily an opinion piece. Yes, you're trying to get someone to conclude what you want them to. But in just a story that describes, say, a terrorist attack, all they're trying to do is give you information. So when you're approaching a paper for this class, remember what your goal is to give a reasoned defense of some claim. You approach your writing by thinking, what I'm being asked to do is defend something. Now, once you know that you are supposed to be defending something, the key is to figure out, what do you want to defend? And this is the thesis. The thesis is some claim that the rest of the paper is looking to defend. So when somebody says, I believe that cats are better than dogs, or in this paper, I will argue cats are better than dogs. Cats are better than dogs is the claim they're arguing for. And to figure out what claim you want to argue for, you first have to figure out what particular question you're being asked to answer. So in the prompts I gave you, the first question, you can look through each prompt and it'll tell you you can identify what question is being asked. What question do I have to come up with a conclusion about and then defend in the rest of the paper? So in the first one, the question you're being asked is, should you shoot your best friend? And then your theses are going to be the possible answers to that question. In the second prompt, it's, should the Krogan be judged or should they not? That is, the question is, should the Krogan be judged? Are they morally reprehensible? And then your thesis is just going to be an answer to that question. In the third one is, should this person's website be allowed or not? That's the question. So in any type of argumentative writing, the first step is ask yourself, what am I being asked to do? And then ask yourself, what are the possible answers to this question? And that's what this assignment is about. I have given you 3 prompts. This is the thesis assignment. The first assignment, which is due on Monday. I've given you 3 prompts, and each prompt is about one of the topics we talked about in the final 3 weeks of the class. And each of those prompts is giving you a situation, then asking you a question about that situation, and then asking you to give a reasoned defense of a thesis that is an answer to one of those questions. So when you're approaching any sort of argumentative writing, and the way you can recognize argumentative writing is there's going to be a question being asked, and there's going to be possible answers to it. In a poem, there's no question being asked. It's just a poem. In a news article, it's just describing something. There's not a question in the background. So when you're looking at any type of writing, you can think about it as what is the ultimate goal? And you'll recognize argumentative writing because you'll see that they're asking you to answer a question, and not just answer a question, but explain why your answer is the correct one. And this is something I'm going to be talking about a lot more in the next couple of classes. But when you're working on a paper like this, your goal is not just to explain your reasoning. To say, I believe this because, and just describe your own reasoning, that's not going to persuade someone. What you need to do is explain why your reasons are so good that somebody else should believe it. Think of the difference between me being like, I believe in God because I was raised this way, versus somebody who says, I believe in God and you should too because of the order in the universe and the fact that only an intelligent being could create this. Or somebody who says, I do not believe in God because modern evolutionary theory gives a good explanation for why things can look orderly when in fact they're completely random. So in those cases, it's not just about saying what your conclusion is and why you believe it, but it's about presenting it to someone else so that they will believe what you want them to. So this type of writing, we're talking about in the context of a philosophy paper, but this type of writing exists much more generally. Other types of argumentative writing are things like a cover letter for a job. When you write a cover letter, it's the front page when you turn in a job application. What are you doing on that cover letter? Well, you are providing reasons to defend the claim that the person you're writing to should hire you. When you are writing an email to your professor, asking them, Professor, I think I need an extension for this, and here is why. Will you take my circumstances into account and give me an extension on the paper? That is another type of argumentative writing. You have a thesis here. Your thesis is, I deserve an extension, or you should give me an extension. And the rest of the email is providing reasons behind that. So this sort of practicing of argumentative writing is something that will help you more than simply in the context of working on philosophy papers. So the thing to keep in mind, if I'm just summarizing this, also, I'm sorry if I'm a little fuzzy headed. I'm just a little bit out of it today. I got my second vaccine shot yesterday. I'm just a little bit off. So if I'm confusing in any way, feel free to reach out, ask any questions. So the thing to keep in mind from this little spiel today is when you're going about writing any paper for any class, remind yourself why you're doing it. Remind yourself, generally speaking, why writing is something that's worth practicing. 2, remind yourself that writing does not come easy to anyone. It is something that needs to be practiced, and it is a skill that is worth learning because of the impacts it can have and the benefits it can have throughout your life. Emails, job applications, even dating profiles are written. All of these things, it's helpful if you've practiced your writing. And then ask yourself, what particularly am I being asked to do? Don't just think of, I have to write this paper. Think rather, what is it that this prompt, what sort of time traveling is it asking me to do? Is it asking me to make someone in the future feel a certain way? Is it asking me to make someone in the future, cause them to be entertained? Or is it rather asking someone to come up, or asking someone to believe, asking me to come up with an argument that will cause somebody else to believe what I want them to believe by providing them with good reasons to think that what I'm saying is true and that they should believe it. So that's the general gist of today. Now, a couple last things on theses. When you're writing a thesis, there are, for an argumentative paper, the general thing to keep in mind is keep it simple. And I don't mean like you necessarily have to have a very straightforward thesis. You can have a nuanced thesis. What I'm saying is make it as clear as it can be to the writer. So if somebody's asking you the question, what are better, dogs or cats? Keep the sentence straightforward and simple and just say something like, in this paper, I will argue that dogs are better than cats. So in this sort of thing, you do not need to make it more complicated. Also though, so you don't have to use big words. You can use, and this is something that I want to stress, in argumentative style papers, you're allowed to use words like I. You're allowed to use short things. Don't think that you have to write in big fancy language. The other key is, because there's some thesis you're arguing for, make sure that when you're writing the thesis, you're not just describing a fact of the matter. Don't just say, so in this paper, I will discuss that some people prefer dogs and some people prefer cats. That isn't a thesis. That's just describing a state of affairs. What makes something a thesis is that there's some claim you're arguing for. So in the assignment for Monday, what I'm asking you to do is read through all 3 prompts, familiarize yourself with them, and write one thesis per side of the argument per prompt. Or in other words, 2 theses per prompt. One of which it would be, so imagine one of the prompts was, John and Susie are having an argument about what's better, cats or dogs. John says dogs are better. Susie says cats are better. The question is, what do you believe? What are better, cats or dogs? Well, then what I'd ask you to write are 2 different sentences. The first one would be, in this paper, I will argue that dogs are better than cats. And the second one would be, in this paper, I will argue that cats are greater than dogs. That's all I need you to do for each prompt is 2 sentences. Each sentence will just be the thesis. This is just to familiarize you with the prompts, make you feel comfortable as you're reading them, and try to get you to know what the possible answers to the questions I'm posing are, so that when the following week I ask you for an outline of what your overall paper is going to do, you're going to have some familiarity with what the possible answers are. You don't have to decide yet which prompt you want to write on. You don't have to decide yet what answer you want to give to the question being posed by the prompt. I just need you to have thought about it and thought what the possible answers of the prompt are. All right, so that's all I really wanted to say in this video. Trying to make it so that writing in some ways seems less, recognize how complex of an activity writing is, so that we don't just go into it thinking like, oh, writing, that's a thing that you either know how to do or don't know how to do. That's not how it works. To really highlight, because all too often we all teach it as if that's how it works. Just to remind everyone, that's not what's going on. And anybody, even if you've never written a paper you've been happy with in your life, you have every ability to end up writing very well, very clearly, and improving. It's just a matter of putting in the time and thoughtful time where you practice and understand and think about what you're doing while you do it. All right, that's all I had to say today. And we'll see everyone on Monday. Make sure to fill out the thesis assignment and post it to the Blackboard. If you have any questions about what I've talked about in this video or about anything we talked about on Monday, feel free to reach out. Otherwise, good luck with the rest of the week, and I will see you all on Monday.